Hey guys, I just want to do another video. I've been going through the Microsoft Learning, and I've also done um, uh, the KCNA Learning and Security Plus and A Plus certifications, and it's just all, it irritates me, to be honest. We all have this. It's like we have all this very similar technology, but at the same time we all want to name stuff differently so we're different or we don't get sued. One of the two usually ends up happening. So I'm going through all these trainings and stuff and like learning all this stuff, and I'm just like, I don't feel like I ever learn anything. I just learn like the surface level, and then when you start going into the deeper stuff you start learning more. But I feel like there's just so much useless fluff, especially with AI coming out. Like, I don't need to know the full details of and definitions. I need to know why things are breaking. I need to know why things behave a certain way. Because I feel like in the future we're gonna get to a point where we're only using OpenAI for everything. Um, you're gonna use maybe Copilot, or you're gonna use ChatGPT or something like that. Um, you're just gonna have, for at least from the like the tier twos perspective, tier tier twos. Um, I can see us a lot of people just using this kind of stuff going forward in the future. I think the business solution that people really should be thinking about is offline solutions like Llama that would be able to pull in its existing knowledge of all the stuff going on with Microsoft and then have it be fully offline and secure. Then we're able to do audits on that security. I think that's going to be the long-term enterprise solution that realistically we're going to be wanting to look at. I don't know how much companies are looking at that from that perspective because everybody's going to have protected IP and they're going to have very uncomfortable questions about using AI, and that's a lot of times why companies are not wanting to use AI completely in all situations. But um, I could see very much in the future where we're going to get to a point where, as a sysadmin, I could easily have an AI built for most of my stuff, and then I wouldn't have to think about everything, and I could ask it questions, and because it has a bigger knowledge base than I do, and figure out optimizations that we can make, um, and it kind of frustrates me because I don't think we're ever going to get to that point, just because the money isn't there. Um, for most people. Either it's too cost too much for a business to create something like that, or B, um, it's not profitable for a company to provide that kind of solution unless they're providing it from a large scale perspective. So I don't know. It scares me. That's for sure. I think we're definitely going to have companies where they're going to be using low level AIs for basic troubleshooting stuff, but human nature is always going to be, I need somebody to make me feel good about my terrible situation I'm dealing with. Um, and then the devil's advocate side is things like medical stuff or, like insurance type stuff where AI is making all the decisions and it's very cutthroat. There's no wiggle room, and that scares me. So I can see a lot of jobs just being cut in the future and being shrunk down to one person to automate and manage it. I think that's what's going to end up happening. We're going to have large teams of HR that are going to be skeletonized down to one or two people because they're not needed anymore. Um, AI is doing all the major decisions for you and making all the major issues go away, and you're just there to make sure it's following what are the business's expectations or requirements would be. Sales team will be the same thing. It's able to, a lot of sales stuff that goes on right now is, hey, what's my competitors doing differently for me? And you can easily get AI to analyze that stuff, and so that scares me. And so a lot of these certifications that I'm seeing, like the A plus certification, it has some stuff that's current, but a lot of it's, hey, you need to know about bayonet connectors. You need to know about technology that's 10, 15 years old. And you're like, but why? Um, why would I ever need to know this? We're getting to a point where you can literally just take your camera on your phone and ask Google, hey, what is this? And it'll tell you exactly what it is and what it's used for, what situation it's used for. Um, I think the future is really going to be how efficient you are with using AI and automation tools like Terraform. Um, or there's some other good automation tools, but I think that's a lot of what we're going to be doing is just a lot of if statements, a lot of programming at all business levels. Um, someone You'll probably have a developer set up the initial programming, and then you won't have to go any further than that. That's terrifying from not just an IT perspective, but everybody's going to get impacted by AI. Resumes are getting written by AI. You're going to have systems to track that stuff and identify that, hey, this is being written by AI. But what's your comfort level? How do you compete against AI? Um, I mean, it's already got a Harvard level education. How do you compete against that in the workforce? It's all about cost for people. So either your job's going to get outsourced if it needs to be, or you're going to be competing with AI directly. Um, I have a feeling that you're only going to see 10% of the workforce working in the next 5 years in a lot of departments, and that scares me a lot. It's like I can go through notes and make as many graphs as I need to about my notes and stuff. I can start doing all my patch management stuff and understand all these concepts, but AI is gonna always outcompete us. I'm going through this learning stuff, and I really wish it would just sometimes have an AI off to the side that I could easily just say, hey, this section doesn't make sense. Can you give me some more clarification? Um, they were smart to have it ask what my goals were for this, but I wish it would take it to a step further and go, hey, what advanced features are you looking for? Okay, you want to know about this topic? Okay, let's do a quick quiz and kind of quiz you and figure out where your comfort level's at. What's your programming prowess? Um, I remember doing that quite a bit when I was in college, where you could take courses and they would usually do a pretest to see how much of your test needed to be done. I know with like the my computer certification I tested out at 95% of it. I tested out of it so well that they're like, yeah, you don't need the textbooks. Um, you just need to I had to just learn some of the Microsoft Office stuff, which is stupid because Microsoft Office products are I don't feel like they're a leader in that product always. Like a lot of kids are growing up with Gmail and stuff, so they're not using that or going through school and using Gmail, so they're not familiar with it. Plus, yeah, it's frustrating. Plus, like Outlook just did a huge update and they're removing tons of features, so that irritates me. Plus, it depends on what platform you're on. If you're on Mac, it's a different shortcut keys. They were asking me that. They're like, "What shortcut is this?" I'm like, I don't use Windows shortcuts. I just know where approximately everything is and where logically everything makes sense, and then I just go find it from there. Um, like I was even setting up a Windows server recently with Active Directory and stuff, doing that integration, and the documentation didn't, the Windows documentation didn't indicate how to set up stuff. The preferred way is to do a DNS or like a website, have it tied in that, but the documentation didn't say A, how to do that, or B, why you're doing that, or C, how to do it locally. For me to do this locally, I had to go and set up my DNS to be my point towards my actual server, and it didn't say that in the documentation from what I saw. Um, I assumed it was that, but it wasn't clear, and it wasn't clear what naming convention should have been there. Like, I needed I could have probably gone to ChatGPT for it, but I needed an AI assistant would just be able to go, oh yeah, you probably are doing it this wrong. This is your setup, so let's have you do it this right way. Um, so that's frustrating to me. Is sometimes like they don't make complete sense, especially for somebody that's just literally setting it up for the first time or second time. And you have to go and figure that stuff out. Like I put a name record in my router, it still didn't show up to point it towards that for some reason. It might have been the naming convention. Could have been a lot of different things, but that's just one of the things I'm trying to dig into and figure out is Microsoft products. I feel like they're pushing hard on the Azure side, and they're purposely removing development tools that are locally sourced. Um, like I've been trying to find a good solution for managing stuff locally on the machine, like applications that are pre-installed or being able to push applications on the device. Um, and everybody's like, oh yeah, just go use Jamf, and I'm like, that's an Azure tool though. That's going to require me to set it up through their web services, which are it's much as possible, and it's pretty inexpensive, especially when you look at it from an enterprise perspective and the security side of things, because Microsoft is just handling all that stuff for you. But I was just hoping to be able to set it up locally, get a feel for how it works and how it breaks. Because if you just have it done for you, you don't learn it as much, especially when you start getting in the weeds of how do you manage that. Um, so I don't know. I'm trying to get an understanding of some of this stuff, but I don't feel like any of it's very linear, and they just expect you to have all your knowledge already pre-baked in as well, and that kind of gets frustrating for me. I'm just like, I just want to learn about these features, and you're not making it easy for me. You're making me go through like 15 hours of trainings that a lot of it's not relevant to what we're dealing with or what I'm wanting to learn about because I already know a lot of this stuff. I just don't know it in the straightforward way. I want to be able to just look it up. See, with like Apple products, at least for actually no, Apple products doesn't really have an enterprise anymore. Um, but Apple's documentation was at least coherent. I feel like I'm just all over the place with Microsoft. I never know if I'm on a current version of their tools or an older version. You know, it's just like Windows 11. It just feels like their tools are all over the place sometimes, and I never know what's the current or most ideal. Um, so I guess I'll just keep going through it, but yeah, I feel like going through this, I'm just like, I wish I had. Maybe Microsoft Copilot would be the solution, but I've always felt like Microsoft solutions are always half baked these days. AI is no different. I would love a AI that could just help guide through some of the stuff, but ChatGPT does pretty good. I was using it for my Linux server that I was setting up, that I was having some issues with. I'd be curious to start trying it with these Microsoft issues and see how well it does. But like I said, there's always that wiggle room and comfort zone that ChatGPT doesn't always understand the best solution. It just has a solution. And the only way you can know the best solution is to really dig into it. And that's one of its shortcomings, I think. If it's something that's highly repeatable, then it makes sense. But some of this stuff is not repeatable, and updates cause things to change enough that it's going to be problematic. I don't know. I'm just I'm just frustrated. I've done so much trainings and stuff. I wish I had the funds to go get all the certifications, but man, so many products that Microsoft has. It's hard to know what's actually relevant. What's the best career path? I don't even know if going to college would even be beneficial at this point, just because of how much is changing right now with things. Um, that is one reason why I liked the Kubernetes certification process. The first one is just, hey, do you know the acronyms? Some of it kind of bothers me because if you know too much, you'll struggle to understand some of the concepts they're asking. But then this next one is the CKA exam. The CKA exam is really great because it's all troubleshooting based. So as long as you know your stuff and know you're optimized, you can pass the CKA exam pretty easily. Um, I'm wondering how Microsoft's stuff is set up like that or not. I haven't dug into their high end stuff. I'm usually just going, hey, I have a dumb idea. I want to go set it up and deploy it. How do I go do that? And then you start digging into it. You know, how do you want to set up your forest and tree service? Um, I don't feel like they moderate that as much as they probably could. They're usually just trying to say, hey, this stuff exists. Go do best practices. I don't know if I've really seen a guide on what the best practices mean, because if you make that stuff public, then it gives threat actors an option. It's kind of like I was watching this video on deploying a web server, I think is what it was. Yeah, they're installing a web server that's Microsoft based. I don't know what they're using that web server for, because they just dropped me into it. They're like kind of jumping around because this is what the AI is doing. Um, but they're like, oh yeah, just use default port 80, and I'm like, that's gonna be it's an open IP address and it's on port 80. That's gonna easily be getting scanned. What kind of security are you guys starting to use? What kind of I don't know. What kind of two-factor are you guys using? Are you using passkeys yet? Um, Maybe I'm just becoming super paranoid with all this stuff, but I want to know, why isn't this getting automated? Where is this being set up? I think they're going to be going over setting up a, gosh, drawing a blank, setting it up with a load balancer. They talk about it a little bit, but they haven't gotten into it yet. Probably just need to dig into it more. Um, in our environment, we would always use non-standard ports for everything. We wouldn't use standard ports because those were easily port scanned and identified what they were supposed to be used for. Um, we always did automation first, so um, we would usually in a dev state, the expectation was to set it up and get it running, and then figure out what the optimal settings were. Once we figured that out, we then created templates around that so that it could be fully automated for deployments. And then when we got it into prod, we would set it up on a load balancer that was tied to a subnet, not a specific IP address, and then you would deploy it that way. That way, if you needed to stand up a secondary one to replace the primary, you could do that. I can almost guarantee you his load balancer setup is going to be on a per IP address basis, which is going to bother me. Um, and that becomes a problem when I try to go take the test. We're like, well, how do you do this? And you're like, well, you're asking it too basic. You know, you're not considering all the security aspects and problems that you're going to be running into. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just naive, and I'm still a pretty early developer, and I'm happy to accept that. Um, those are always the questions on my mind: is why are we doing it this way? Why aren't we thinking ahead and thinking about ways that a threat actor will? It's whenever I deploy stuff, it's always, well, how's the threat actor going to be getting into this? A lot of the applications I'm deploying are pretty home home solutions. They don't always have tons of security behind them, and I've been trying to figure out ways to make them more secure, but I just have to focus on them more to make them more secure. Um, like I've been wanting to have a good DNS solution that provides SSL certificates for HTTPS, but I haven't really found a good way to manage all that. I was thinking about trying out Pi-hole, but the Docker, I think the Docker image I was using on my server wasn't auto deploying, so I think I'm gonna have to build the YAML file from scratch, which isn't a big deal. I just need to go look at it. I just been more focused on Microsoft stuff just because that intrigues me more than having DNS working. The main reason I was wanting HTTPS working on my local machines was I just was wanting to see if I can manage that without having to go out to the internet. Um, I mean, it's pretty easy to just go set up a Cloudflare account and have that synced back to your machines, but like I said, I kind of enjoy seeing how things are working in the background, what things are causing it to break. If I start adding like subnets to stuff, how much is accessible and opening up certain ports so you can access those things like that. Um, like Nextcloud, for instance, Nextcloud is a pretty awesome application. Um, from a home user perspective and a small business, Nextcloud has a lot of great features. They have a good community area. Um, from like a home use perspective, this is basically a solid replacement for Google Drive. Um, you just set up your network storage and then have this syncing to it. Um, I didn't like there was some weird stuff that I ran into, but I might make a separate video on that. I can't remember how many pricing. I think it's free for up to 100 users. I could be wrong. Um, so I was self-hosting it, and it indicated that I could do the phone and messaging stuff. But they have an email client built in that you can use. You just have to provide your own email hosting, text messaging and phone calls. Text messaging and phone call require you to have HTTPS just for security, so people can't just snoop on what you're talking about. With all the security stuff, that makes sense that they would want that. Um, but then they provide, markdown editing of notes. They also provide word editors, um, things like that you can easily do with multi-user support. I can't remember if it provided virus scanning directly. Um, I try to usually just depends on. For me, I usually just add like Climate AV is a pretty common one. I just set up a YAML file to scan things periodically, or um, just make sure things are staying secured. But I definitely love this program as a good Google Drive uh, replacement, or Google Team or Microsoft Teams replacement. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more in your control, um, especially when you don't need to have everything online. Um, Obviously, if you hosted this through a DNS server like outside of your home, like with Cloudflare, you could definitely get access to your files. But I don't know enough of the security background stuff of um, how to keep stuff completely secured um, to the level that I would feel comfortable. Like they have a login that's I believe managed by Nextcloud themselves, kind of like the way Plex is. But I want to take it the next level of VPN control um, and I just don't feel comfortable enough yet with my security prowess to keep a bad actor out of my network. So I usually just keep my network very privatized as much as I can, so I don't have to deal with so much of that until I'm more comfortable from an external perspective and risking things. Um, Anyways, sorry if I'm rambling. I just going through all the stuff in my head, and it's a lot. It's a lot of information to go through and on your own and figure out why things aren't working. Um, Microsoft stuff doesn't ever feel like it's straightforward unless you're using their paid products, and that kind of bothers me. But I respect their decision on that stuff. Um, but I'll keep plugging along and getting it figured out and configured. It's just how difficult it is. Um, I know at work we usually had pre-built tools that were already set up, but I'm setting this up from scratch, and I'm finding a lot of those pre-built tools we had aren't really compatible anymore, especially with Windows 11. Um, they technically work, they just don't work as expected. Um, the other thing I want to do is get some enterprise built ISOs with Windows, see how those function, um, image some laptops and things like that, and test all that out. So I just need to figure out if there's a what's the best way to go with that as I dig into it. Um, Maybe Jamfizz could be the best thing with Mac OS and Intune for everything else. But yeah, we'll keep digging into it. It's just tedium. You spend hours and hours just digging through stuff, trying stuff out and seeing if it fails, and how it fails, and then broaden your knowledge. Just keep filling it out and getting more and more. Um, I'm currently looking through just the basics of Microsoft stuff and the architecture. Um, I don't always feel the need to go into the advanced stuff from a training perspective, at least on Microsoft. But I do get into the advanced stuff when I'm just setting it up and trying things and going, oh yeah, I remember setting this up somehow at one point. I wanted to see what that's like to do that from scratch, and go from there. But it's definitely a lot of interesting fun digging into this kind of stuff.